In order to clear the debts my biological parents had accumulated, I juggled 3 jobs tirelessly, working both day and night to alleviate some of their burdens. The relentless schedule left me exhausted and focused solely on saving money, resulting in a diet limited to steamed buns and pickled vegetables. Tragically, this poor nutrition led to me developing stomach cancer at a young age. When I attempted to use my savings for medical treatment, I discovered that the $100,000 I had painstakingly saved had been taken by my parents. Elena, we used that money to settle our debts. We're left with nothing. Can you wait another month? I glanced at the doctor's urgent recommendation for immediate hospitalization but remained silent. Later that night, while delivering takeout to an elegant mansion hosting a party, I witnessed my parents surrounding a sophisticated young woman celebrating her birthday. They were lavishly spending on her, far exceeding what was needed for my medical bills. It turned out they hailed from a wealthy lineage, and the supposed debt was merely a test for their biological daughter, who had been mistakenly switched at birth. I couldn't recall how I made it back home. Leaving that mansion felt like abandoning a part of myself. Even when lying in my modest bed, I felt numb. I stared blankly at the yellowed ceiling for what felt like an eternity before hearing the familiar jingle of keys in the old lock. I sat up as my parents walked in, having changed their expensive attire into plain work uniforms resembling a typical working-class couple. They seemed surprised to see me back so early. "Elena, you're home early today. No work?" Forcing a smile, I responded, "Yeah, I had a headache, so I returned early." My mother, Maria, immediately set aside her bag and approached me, placing her warm hand on my forehead. Her voice was filled with genuine concern.
No feber.
"Why do you suddenly have a headache? Did you take any medicine?" I lied, my eyes cast downward. Yes, I did. My father picked up the bag Maria had set down and handed it to me. "Elena, it's your birthday today, and we couldn't afford a cake or gifts, but we got you this little dessert. You should try it." I glanced at the dessert. It was fancy, something I had never seen before. Previously, I might have been moved to tears, appreciating that my parents remembered my birthday despite our hardships, but now it felt ironic. I was the one who had delivered the dessert. The pampered girl had ordered it on a whim and then scoffed at it once I had delivered it. "I don't want such cheap things, just throw it away." I never expected my parents to present me with that dessert, especially not with a complimentary gift from the shop. Am I only worth the freebies to you? My heart felt as though it had been drenched in vinegar, sour and bitter. Yet, I showed no emotion, simply setting the dessert aside. "Thanks, Dad." "Thanks, Mom." My cold response confused them. They thought I should be delighted with the dessert, but since I had mentioned not feeling well, they didn't press further until I brought up the $100,000 again. "Dad, Mom, I actually need the money urgently. A month is too long. Can you give me the money sooner?" Their expressions changed abruptly as if I had touched upon something sensitive. The headache was about the money, wasn't it? My father's face was etched with impatience. "Didn't we tell you it went to debt?" My mother also disapproved. "Elena, why do you need so much money? Where are we supposed to get $100,000 now? Are you involved in something shady? You weren't like this before." As they lectured me, I thought of the necklace, a pink diamond the size of a sugar cube. I remembered hearing guests around saying it was purchased for over $10 million at an auction, 100 times my $100,000. Yet when I asked for my own money, they reprimanded me as if I had committed a serious offense. I forced a smile, but the exhaustion weighed heavily on my heart. "Never mind, I don't need it anymore." I lay back in bed. My parents exchanged looks, still displeased but said nothing more. The apartment fell silent. Lying there, unable to sleep, I heard them speaking softly. "Is she asleep?" "Probably. Let me check." I quickly closed my eyes, pretending to sleep as footsteps approached. Once they were certain I was asleep, they spoke more freely. "How long do we have to stay in the dump?" "Hang in there. Just 1 more month. It'll be 3 years by then. We can bring Elena back." My mother sounded worried. "Honey, do you think Elena will be angry that we kept this from her?" "What for?" My father dismissed her concern. "So many people want to associate with our family. Without Clara's idea, how would we know if Elena truly wants to be with us?" "Right, the girl's been decent almost 3 years now, just not generous. She fusses over the $100,000 like it's the end of the world. My mother's voice carried disappointment. My father added, she wasn't raised by us, so unlike Clara. Even without blood ties, Clara is the perfect lady for our family. Yeah, not sure if after the test bringing Elena back will embarrass us. Their voices faded as they fell asleep. I didn't open my eyes, but tears streamed down my cheeks. They had truly gone all out, holding high positions yet lowering themselves to act as a working-class couple with me. But why? Why just because they have money does that give them the right to interfere with my life? Am I supposed to feel guilty because I value money? Was that something I always desired? If I had grown up like Clara, in the same environment with all those advantages and a good education, would I be any different? But I was just a kid who grew up in an orphanage with no parents. People used to give me strange looks in school, which is why I became a loner with a strong personality. I worked tirelessly to get into a decent college, graduated, and even secured an okay job in most people's eyes. Before they found me, I was prepared to remain an orphan forever, never experiencing a parent's love. But they appeared, and all the hidden hopes inside me surged outward. I believed I could have a happy home. Even if it was poor and life was tough. I was still young and believed I could make money, but it seemed I was just unlucky. I had stomach cancer, and then discovered that the parents I had been dreaming of were deceiving me all along. I picked up the pastry from the table. It looked so fancy. No wonder my coworkers always waited in line to buy them. But it wasn't just a pastry. It was something others had discarded, even a freebie. Maybe to my parents, someone like me only deserved a difficult life, to have only what others didn't want. This night felt endless. I couldn't sleep at all, my stomach hurting unbearably. Just as I contemplated getting up for some medicine, someone knocked urgently on the door of our small rented apartment. The knocking was insistent. Someone was in a real hurry. My parents, awakened by the noise, grumbled in annoyance. Who is that disturbing people so early? I was closest to the door with red swollen eyes. I sighed and opened it. A police officer in uniform stood outside, surveying me before asking, "You're Elena, right? Do you remember where you were last night?" His tone irritated me, but knowing I had to cooperate, I answered, "I was running errands, delivering pastries." My parents were up now too. Hearing it was the police, they frowned and stepped in front of me as if they were going to support me. "Officer, did something happen to our daughter?" I stared at their backs, feeling conflicted. They always acted as though they cared about me, but if they truly did, why would they lie? My mind was scattered, struggling to understand my own feelings. The officer's voice snapped me back to reality. "Elena, you're a suspect in a theft case. You need to come with us for questioning." My parents' eyes widened in shock, staring at me incredulously. That instinctive look felt like a knife piercing my already shattered heart. "I didn't steal anything. Why are you looking at me like that?" Finally, my parents awkwardly shifted their gaze. "Officer, there must be some mistake, right? We checked the surveillance. The only suspicious person entering and exiting the area was Elena." The cop explained everything formally, his tone growing sterner. "Elena, that necklace is valuable. If you took it, you better hand it over." I was furious. My stomach cramps intensified with my anger. "You have no proof. How can you just decide it was me? The only suspicious person was you. Please cooperate." My father quickly tried to calm the situation. "It's just a necklace, no big deal. We can pay for it." Yeah, how much could a necklace be worth? Hearing my parents say that, I froze. It wasn't about whether they could afford it or not. They had already decided it was me who took it. But I had merely run an errand at the mansion. What necklace could I have taken? The cops seemed to find my parents' words odd too. "This isn't about compensating anyone. It's about right and wrong. That necklace is $1 million pink diamond. Can you really pay for that? $1 million pink diamond?" Those words seemed to hit my parents hard, their faces turning pale. My mother turned, frowning at me. "Where did you go last night?" Her tone was partly questioning, partly guilty. I felt mocked. "I went to the mansion on the outskirts, delivered pastries for Clara." "You went to the mansion?" My mother's voice rose, but she quickly covered her mouth in regret. My father gave me a long look. "Elena, tell me, what did you see?" "I saw things you didn't want me to see." Obviously, I didn't hold back. Hearing my words, my parents seemed to freeze, completely silent. After what felt like an eternity, my father spoke again, carefully choosing his words. About who we are, we didn't mean to keep it from you. Can you understand? Didn't respond, but my silence spoke volumes. The cop, confused by our conversation, impatiently urged us on. We had no choice but to get into the squad car and head to the station. Inside the station, the girl I saw the night before was waiting. Her eyes were red from crying. Her skin so pale it was noticeable. She looked pitiful. My parents rushed over to her. "Clara, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Your eyes are all red." I caught my reflection in a mirror. My own eyes were swollen from a night of crying. I smirked sarcastically. Even the cop who had been cold towards me looked confused. How come my parents suddenly care about the victim so much and act like they're close friends? The girl sweetly said, "Dad, Mom, you're here." With that one sentence, the eavesdropping officers looked as though they'd been struck by lightning. They glanced at me, then the girl, and finally my plainly dressed parents. How on earth are we all connected? My parents realized they couldn't pretend to be oblivious anymore, and introduced themselves to the cops. "Sorry, officers, both Elena and Clara are our daughters. This is really just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? Dad, Mom, that was my birthday gift you got me." Clara stamped her foot, pouting in frustration. "I know my sister has been through a lot, but that necklace means so much to me. Mom, Dad, you can't play favorites." With just a few words, Clara portrayed herself as a little girl upset over parental favoritism. I saw a flicker of sympathy flash across my parents' faces. My mother grabbed Clara's hand, soothing her gently. "Come on now, she's still your sister. We'll get you more necklaces, okay?" They didn't even bother double-checking. They assumed I took the necklace. That superior attitude really rubbed me the wrong way, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "I already said I didn't take the necklace." My sudden outburst left my parents and Clara dumbfounded. My father massaged his temples in frustration. "If not you, then who? Clara's not the troublemaking type. If she says it's missing, it's missing. Anyway, you knew we were hiding it from you. Why didn't you speak up? Last night we got Clara an expensive necklace, and you only got a pastry. Aren't you upset? I can't believe you blatantly displayed such favoritism and deceit." Once more, I realized my standing wasn't on par with Clara in my parents' minds. They thought I'd retaliate now that I knew the truth, but it never occurred to them that Clara could be causing trouble. While I didn't envy Clara's lavish gift, facing the trust my parents placed in her, and their suspicion of me felt like vinegar poured into my wounds, making them fester. Clara stood behind them, flashing me a defiant look. Our eyes locked, and I understood from the moment I received that delivery call the previous day that everything had been part of her plan, all designed to highlight our differences. Well, she nailed it. I let out a bitter laugh, but my pride wouldn't allow me to accept the label of a thief. Not looking at my parents, I turned to the cops. "Officers, I assure you I didn't take the necklace. You can investigate. Also, might I suggest you thoroughly search the mansion? If it turns out I took it, I'll apologize. If not, I expect an apology from her." Clara's face went stiff. She planned everything but didn't expect me to defy my parents' narrative. She only saw me as obedient, never realizing that before finding them, I had lived fiercely on my own. The cops noticed Clara's expression and seemed to understand. They looked at me, then my parents, and proceeded with the investigation. The focus shifted from my apartment to the mansion. Half an hour passed swiftly. I sat there as calm as possible. Clara was jittery, constantly eyeing the door. When the officer walked in with the necklace, looking displeased, she appeared visibly distressed. "Miss Clara, we found the necklace under your bed." My parents spun around, staring at Clara in disbelief. "Clara, didn't you say the necklace was?" My mother's voice trailed off as she glanced at me with a hint of guilt. Clara's expression hardened, but she forced a smile. "Sorry, I was careless and misunderstood my sister. But we're family, so can't we just drop this?" Her hopeful words seemed charming. I scoffed, clearly not on board. Does she think I'm a fool? When it was about pinning the blame, family didn't matter, huh? She never saw me as family. She only cared now that it backfired on her. When I remained silent, Clara welled up with tears. "I know I was wrong. Will you forgive me this once?" she pleaded, clutching my hand. I hated it when people touched me, especially when she gripped tightly as if trying to dig her nails into me. I recoiled slightly, causing her to stumble backward. Her acting was pathetic. The trick was amateurish. Yet my parents fell for it. Enough, Elena. Your sister's just young. She didn't know any better. Can't you be a bit more forgiving? My mother defended fragile Clara on the floor. She's always had health issues. Why did you push her? If her health's bad, mine's perfect. Getting stomach cancer so young, that's easy for me. My stomach cancer? My parents' eyes widened. Why would you get stomach cancer? What do you think? I smirked smugly, and they fell silent. Health issues barring genetics are usually caused by a few things: long periods without food, irregular meals, poor diet, you name it. How come you never told us? My mother rebuked, her eyes now wet. She looked genuinely concerned. It stirred something in me too. But seeing my parents soften their attitude towards me, Clara wasn't happy about it. Her almond-shaped eyes flashed with malice as she rolled her eyes. Sister, stomach cancer isn't a minor illness. Have you been to the hospital? Got any medical records? I raised an eyebrow. What, you think I'm lying? Clara shook her head. Sister, you look pretty healthy to me. I have a classmate whose family member has stomach issues, and they're really skinny. Maybe it was a misdiagnosis. My parents thought Clara's reasoning made sense. Who gets diagnosed with something so serious but still lives life strong and healthy, even working part-time? They probably thought I said it for attention to fool them. Seeing their expressions change, I couldn't be bothered to explain further. I just felt a bit colder inside. I'm the kind of person who holds grudges. To me, they no longer felt like family. But just because I stayed silent doesn't mean they did. You're truly unbelievable, using such tricks to deceive us. Apologize to Clara right now. Looking at the parents I had spent 3 years with, I felt like I never knew them. I need to apologize to Clara? She fell and accused me of stealing. It's slander. She should apologize to me. Hearing my words, my parents looked a bit embarrassed but quickly regained their composure. It's all in the family. No need to argue about slander. It's just a misunderstanding. We know you're upset, but perhaps you don't understand our family's worth. Only around $10 million. Whatever you want in the future, we'll get it for you. Can we just let this go? I coldly looked at the three of them and shook my head slowly. No. My parents didn't expect me to be so unyielding. People like them, always in high places, rarely defy them. Now they were losing face repeatedly because of me. My mother suppressed her annoyance. Elena, must you be so aggressive? Clara apologized, but I didn't accept it and even pushed her. What exactly do you want? You weren't like this before. You were so understanding. I felt even more ironic. Understanding? Sure, I used to be quite understanding, but what did I get in return? My hard-earned money, my health, even my reputation? They're not even willing to leave me those as their daughter. Do I owe them? But thinking of the $100,000, I finally smirked. Want me to drop this? Fine, return my $100,000. What excuse will you use this time? Can't pay it back. Hearing me mention the $100,000 again, my parents' faces darkened. My father furrowed his brow as if I'd said something embarrassing. It's just $100,000. Do you really have to bring it up again and again? Elena, aren't you being a little petty? As our daughter, $100,000 should be nothing to you. His arrogance and pride were blatant, prompting me to let out a snort of laughter. Sure, for a rich family's daughter, $100,000 is nothing. But for me, it's the blood, sweat, and tears of the last 3 years. My official salary is $6,000 a month, plus $4,000 from part-time jobs. Paying rent and supporting 3 people, I scraped together that $100,000 to help you pay off debts. And now you say I'm being petty. My questioning angered them, yet they had no words to counter. That's exactly how these 3 years had gone. They lived in my rental, spending my money without a second thought, always assuming they'd repay me later, never considering how much I was sacrificing. I heard my mother mutter something. Weren't you used to growing up like that? Why can't you adjust to us? My father stayed silent, but his expression showed he agreed with my mother. Just like that, my last bit of hope for them vanished. To them, I was used to hardship growing up, so I could endure more. All the compromises I made for family became expected. I felt as though I was being torn apart, every inch of my body in pain. Not wanting to waste more words on these out-of-touch aristocrats, I sat up and repeated what I had said before. For me to let this go, return my $100,000. My voice was soft but shook them to their core. Looking at me, they seemed to realize they were about to lose something important. Clara's eyes flickered. If the $100,000 is so important to her, let's just give it to her. We'll make it up to her later. We're family after all.
No grall l'ascou Bernast.
My parents considered it, realizing I might be right. Fine, Elena, we'll give you the $100,000, but you must drop this matter. It was just a test for you and you've done well these 3 years. That $100,000 isn't significant. However, you can't behave like this in the future as our daughter. What? Can't you have a mere $100,000? Even the nearby police officers were at a loss for words at their bizarre sense of superiority. What a weird attitude. Unable to even appreciate their own child, ignoring them, I checked the text notification of the payment, explained the situation to the police, and prepared to leave. My parents were stunned. Where are you going? Home. My mother frowned. Back to that rental? It's so shabby. Come back to the mansion with us. Shabby? Hearing that, I suddenly remembered our first New Year's together, cramped into the rental. We watched the Spring Festival Gala, eating veggie dumplings together. My parents had been smiling from ear to ear. With Elena here, this is the happiest New Year we've ever had. They hugged me, and for the first time, I felt the warmth of my parents blushing and tearing up. It was then that I swore I would make money and help them pay off their debts. I didn't think much at the time when I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. The house was always empty. I just assumed they were out working, never questioning it. But now, looking back, I realized my mother looked at me with disdain at the dinner table. After that hug, I remembered for so long they were visibly uncomfortable, as if bugs were crawling on them. To them I was that bug. I didn't stop walking and headed straight to the hospital after leaving the police station. The scenery outside the cab window kept passing by as I took a deep breath, feeling clearer than ever before. Family like this? I'm better off without them. The bodyguard looked relieved and showed a hint of sympathy in his eyes towards me. He never expected the parents who always seemed to dotingly love Clara would be so fed up with their own daughter. He felt embarrassed to admit how thankful he was that Elena hadn't attended the family reunion the previous day. As a bodyguard, he had seen a lot while entering and leaving the mansion. My parents had Clara prepare dresses and makeup, and Clara did so diligently, but she set aside 2 outfits. One looked like a tacky flea market find, while the other was quite normal. He hadn't thought much of it until he saw her hide the good one. It was all about setting someone up for humiliation, making someone look foolish, then turning the accusations against them to ruin Elena's reputation. But her meticulous planning was all for naught, as the intended victim never showed, ruining her malicious plot. Thinking back, the bodyguard nearly laughed but held back, standing at the door waiting for Elena's family. He genuinely wondered how the parents would react once they realized Elena was truly ill. Elena's family soon arrived at the hospital. This time they all showed up, including my parents and Clara, though none of them seemed sympathetic. They looked more like they were here to cause a scene rather than visit a patient. Before the bodyguard could say anything, my father kicked the hospital room door open. Elena, how long are you going to keep causing drama? We gave you back that $100,000 as promised compensation. If you keep this up, we'll disown you. Clara followed, pretending to calm things down. Dad, don't be too upset. Maybe Elena just isn't thinking straight. But really, Elena, why end up in the hospital? Isn't that just inviting ridicule from strangers? Her words only made my parents angrier. The higher someone's status, the more they cared about their image. At this moment, they genuinely felt that disowning their daughter might be better. My mother moved closer to scold me, but when she turned, her voice faltered. What? What is that? A young nurse who had held back long enough finally spoke out. Are you blind? It's medical equipment. Are you family or foes? She just had surgery for stomach cancer and is still very weak. You all stormed in like this. Who raised you people? There are other patients here too. You know? My family, accustomed to looking down on everyone, were never scolded like this. Yet seeing everyone around glare at them angrily, they knew they were in the wrong. That one nurse's comment, "Stomach cancer? You do have stomach cancer," made my mother stagger back, nearly falling. My father barely caught her, both of them shocked. "Elena, why didn't you tell us you had surgery?" I sneered. "Tell you? Didn't you accuse me of lying when I mentioned being sick before? When I said I needed that $100,000, you said I was greedy." The words were like slaps to the face, leaving them looking guilty and ashamed. Clara tried to salvage the situation, but before she could speak, I cut her off. "Clara, planning to accuse me of lying again? I still have records on my phone from when you sent me on errands to the mansion. Don't think you're that clever. If you want to stay home, it's all yours. It has nothing to do with me. I've been an orphan all my life. Growing up and beyond, got it?" I made it clear I was cutting ties with them. My parents looked as though they'd been struck by lightning, realizing the obedient daughter they once had was gone. Though Clara stood before them, the distance felt vast. That day, they were pentaed by my bedside for a long time, but the hospital staff and fellow patients knew what they had done, standing firmly by my side and promptly escorting them out. I thanked those who helped me with a smile. Since that day, my parents realized my difficult upbringing wasn't my fault. They owed me. Learning about my experiences over those 3 years shattered their hearts. They tried calling, but I had already blocked their numbers. Every new number was blocked as well. Soon my phone buzzed with transfer notifications. I watched each transaction, hundreds of thousands coming through, and accepted them without remorse. After all, it was their debt to me. I spent a month recovering in the hospital, and after being discharged, I learned about my family situation online. Clara was exposed, and my parents kicked her out in anger and frustration. Bitter, she sold company secrets to rivals, leading to her arrest. Before her imprisonment, she screamed that she was the real Paris, appearing utterly deranged. My parents' business, once mighty, crumbled under rival attacks, taking just 3 years to implode from a mere seed to rubble. They, who were so high and mighty, ended up bankrupt, just as they had deceitfully told me, becoming debt-ridden commoners. But this time they owed not just millions but over $100 million, an amount impossible to repay in a lifetime. As for me, I had long moved on, using the compensation they had given me to buy a house in a different city and build my own home. In this world, no one deserved my effort or attempts to please except for myself. I focused on loving myself and nurturing my own beautiful flower anew.